So hello, welcome. My name is Megan and I work in the education team at the Australian National Maritime Museum in Sydney. And I'm going to start just by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land I'm on today, and also acknowledge First Nations people all across Australia, where I'm sure all of our panelists have worked on the lands of many different peoples. So we acknowledge all of them, their elders past, present and emerging, and pay our respects to them. So welcome to this amazing session. And I'm joined by some absolutely amazing women working in marine sciences today. This is a part of the Women in Science event at the Australian National Maritime Museum, and we're also celebrating SeaWeek as well. So it's an absolute pleasure to have everyone here today. And I'm going to let everyone, all the panelists, kind of introduce themselves, what your name is, what you're currently working in, and just one interesting fact about you or your work as well. So we might start with Marianne, if you want to go first. Oh, just need to unmute yourself.
I think I would have learned that by now. Good afternoon or morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Marianne. I'm a marine ecologist and I study the behaviour of birds and marine mammals, often in the colder places of the planet. I'm really interested in their behaviour and how they respond to changes in environmental conditions as well as human activities.
Nice. Thank you. And Kirsty?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kirsty Nash. I'm a researcher working in coral reef ecology, mostly on fish behaviour, so how fish behave on the reef and the roles that they play, and how we can look at making sure that a reef is really healthy, but also ensuring that we can get fish and fish catches that support human health. So balancing ocean health and human health.
Oh, amazing. Chen, how are you today?
Good, thank you, Megan. Hello, everyone. My name is Chen Zhao. Thanks for having me here. I'm a glaciologist and also the couple ice sheet ocean modeler. I use computer models to explore the sea level contributions from the Antarctic ice sheet in a changing ocean and try to assess the impact of the ocean system on large ice sheets with numerical modeling. I started my research on the Antarctic ice sheet since 2011, but has not been to Antarctica until 2011 when I started my contract job as an expedition guide working in the expedition company. I have been to the Antarctic Peninsula, Greenland, and Svalbard for a few times so far. Happy to share my experience, which you may be interested in. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we got Julie.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me on the panel. Yeah, like Marianne, I'm working mostly with seabirds and marine mammals in the colder climates, so around Macquarie Island or the sub-Antarctic, down to Antarctica, and then also around Tasmania. And so the picture in the background here is a royal penguin colony on Macquarie Island. So those little black and white dots you can see are about 150,000 breeding pairs of royal penguins, which live only on Macquarie Island. So yeah, I've been fortunate to get down there and like Marianne and go to these places and do research and yeah, seeing this colony with my eyes. So it's a pretty amazing opportunity.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Rachel, beautiful diving photo in the background there.
Hi there, good morning. So I'm Rachel Kelly and I'm a marine socioecologist. So socio, if you think people, and ecology, nature. So I'm looking at how people interact with the ocean. So whether they understand what happens, whether they want to protect it, so in marine protected areas or special areas, or use it. So people who want to fish, people who want to exploit it for different industries. And that's what I'm looking at mostly, but we'll talk about it later.
Thank you so much. So I might stay with you, Rachel. How did you get into science and studying, socioecology?
Last minute decisions. I didn't have a very big plan. I'm from Ireland, you can probably tell by my accent. So in our school system, we have to do final exams and then decide what we want to do in university. And I think I decided the night before that I wanted to be a marine scientist. I didn't know what I wanted, and one of my friends said, well, you love the ocean and you like science. And I said, okay, that sounds good. So it took the pressure off because I didn't have a big plan or expectation. But I did my degree in marine science and I learned a lot, and I learned what I liked and what I didn't like. And then I started to look at protecting the ocean and did more work on marine conservation and did a lot of diving work and worked on marine protected areas. But from then I really understood that people are the problem, not fish or the environment. And so I became really passionate about trying to connect people to the ocean, trying to give traditional owners the rights to protect and use the ocean in ways that they have already done. And also just to be able to talk to people about the ocean, because obviously in Australia, I think most people live reasonably near the coast, but there's lots of areas around the world where people have never seen the sea. So it's really nice and special to be able to connect people to the ocean now.
Wonderful, yeah. And Kirsty, so you were a bit different. You knew you wanted to be a marine scientist from a very young age. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I went to an aquarium when I was 7, and I saw this diver in the aquarium, and I turned around to my mom and I was like, that's what I'm going to do in my life. And my mom was like, yeah, sure. But it never went away. And so I studied oceanography originally at university, and then I spent a long time working as a dive instructor outside science and just enjoying being in the water every day. And then I realized that really I wanted to learn more. And so that's when I went back and did some more studying, and just like Rachel, shifted more from totally focus on fish and fish behavior to look at sort of the intersection between how humans use the ocean and how fish behave and the roles they play, and how we can balance those two things to sort of maximize social goals, so human health, but we can also maximize the health of the oceans. So, for example, this picture in the background here is me rolling wheels over the reef to try and get an idea of how bumpy the reef is and how the fish are using the holes and the crevices in the reef to for protection and for refuge. So that's the sort of work that I do when I'm out in the field.
Thank you, and it's a great example, I guess, for all the students watching this, that some people will decide what they want to do really, really early on as children. Other people will make that decision a lot later, and there are even heaps of scientists who, won't even study necessarily science the first time they're at uni, study totally different areas, and then we'll switch into science later. So many different career paths. So Chen, why did you choose to study science?
Yeah, actually, I did make this choice 10 years ago when I attended a scientist seminar by a scientific expeditioner from China. I am originally from China. When they talk about their experience working in the far field in the south, I'm so shocked about amazing photos took by them, especially like the background showed by Julia and the colony of penguins and the whales in the Antarctica. I'm so touched by those views and said, yeah, I'm going to be a glaciologist. Then I started my research as master's student, but I didn't realize that I don't need to go to the Antarctica for the data sets I want to get. I can totally get it from the, using the remote sensing technology. But it's still very interesting to do some research with ice, because you use the data set to try to find out why the ice is flowing fast or slow, why it's responding to a changing ocean and the climate changes. So it's pretty interesting. And when I finished my master, I think, yeah, I'm useful to this world because what I'm doing now is kind of interesting to this changing world. And yeah, I want to move forward. That's why I chose to come to here to start my PhD here in this small, beautiful island.
Oh, thank you. So of course, we've got all these different reasons for joining science and different journeys as well. Marianne, how did you get to where you are today in terms of your career? You're on mute again.
Sorry, everyone. I had an experience when I was younger where I was able to see a lot of really large animals. I was always really interested in animal behavior. And then we studied animal behavior when I was in high school. And I think I became aware then that was what really interested me. And so then I ended up doing a science degree at uni with a fair bit of behavior and ecology and some marine science. But I knew at that stage, I think that I was moving more into the ocean realm, and I was really interested in the behavior of seals and penguins and some of the larger animals, but I couldn't study those things at my uni. So then I had to make this big decision, as many of us do, as a 20-year-old, and move to Tasmania to study. And I think, reflecting back on my career, there've been lots of opportunities, and I've made some of my own opportunities, and I've always loved traveling and people, and I like working in far-flung places. And so I've been able to do that because I was prepared to do that. And I think, but not everybody needs to do that to have a career in science. It suits me and my personality, and I've been able to make that work for me. But other people, are happier to be in a particular discipline in a particular place. And there are so many different opportunities in marine science now that I think maybe the most important advice is to just figure out whatever you can, by whichever way you can, what you're truly interested in and what inspires you, and follow that pathway.
That's such great advice for everyone. And I know those people watching along are probably from different parts of Australia, and some people will choose to go to the university that's closest to you. So if you are in Tasmania, that's a great one to go to. If you're in New South Wales, there's heaps of good universities here as well. And then other people would choose to travel and choose to go to a different university and look at the opportunities to for example, study different aspects of science. And so it's great to sort of, have permission to do that and have permission to travel and do different things to sort of see where things go. Julie, you've had lots of different experience and different kind of career paths in terms of science. Do you want to tell us a bit about some of those different opportunities that exist in both in the universities, but also outside of academia?
Yeah, thanks, Megan. So I, when I got into science, the one thing that I really loved doing was volunteering on a whole range of projects. So whether that be through government programs, through university programs, or even just community watch groups like platypus observations and things like that. And it gave me a really good opportunity to see all the range of different science projects going on around the place. And so that was a really nice introduction to the scientific world, not just through the eyes of sort of an academic university. And I guess that gave me a really good opportunity to see what scope there was to continue doing some of this work. And so I actually went and worked for a not-for-profit organisation not long after university over in New Zealand, Yellow-Eyed Penguin Trust, and went and did some field work with them, and realised, what you can actually achieve on a fairly low budget, and driven by the passion of people, I guess. And that really inspired me to keep going in conservation direction. And since then, worked for both state and federal government, working on long-term population monitoring programs, and seeing how those programs really link the science that you're collecting data for into sort of policy and management decisions. And that really, I found a good opportunity to see that sort of full circle of what you're collecting and where that feeds into different decisions that are made for these islands. And I guess the other thing that sparked my interest too is working in a lot of these sites is how we can get all this data in a non-invasive way. So rather than handling a penguin, for example, there are other methods we can use that will allow us to gather all this valuable information without touching a bird, and some of the tools and technology that's around to achieve that. And that's where working at the university at the moment is a really great opportunity to test some of these tools and be involved with some great minds who are really in that pioneering edge of technology. And so one of the things we're doing at the moment is collecting seabird scats and using, looking at the DNA in those scats to find out what they're eating. So we don't have to touch a bird. You get a quizzical look when you go and collect their scat, but otherwise, yeah, these birds and mammals can be left without our interference, which is really inspiring.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. And I guess quite a few of the scientists we've had here today work with animals in terms of looking at those. So Kirsty, you also look at fish behavior, and I guess you can't necessarily go in with a tape measure and measure a fish. So what are some of the techniques we might like and things that you've done to look at, I guess, their health and how they're going?
So there's a range of different ways to study a fish, from very low tech to increasingly high tech. So for example, one of the studies I did, I followed fish around underwater, and every time they took a bite of the subs on the bottom, I would drop a little weight with a pink tape attached to it so I could find it again. And I would follow them around for 2 or 3 minutes. And then once I'd mapped out all these little, put down all these little weights, I'd then go around and draw a map and measure the distances between the weights. So that's at the very sort of low tech end. And now increasingly we're using videos and artificial intelligence to track fish on the videos and to do all these sorts of measurements automatically. So as some of the others had mentioned, there's a real kind of range. You know, if you are a fieldwork person, there's opportunities to do fieldwork where you're out there and you're touching what you're learning about, through to being able to do some really advanced computer modeling and AI and things like that. So there's a real range of opportunities and ways of doing this sort of work.
Thank you. So Rachel, you work with people and with ocean literacy. So your work isn't just about science data and going out and looking at animals. It's also about talking to people. Can you explain a bit about how that, what do you do in terms of, science literacy and how you can talk to people?
Yeah, great. Well, ocean literacy, for anyone who doesn't know, is how we understand the ocean. So it's our knowledge of the ocean, so the things that we know, but it's also our attitudes and our behavior. So do we value the ocean? Do we think it's good? And do we behave in responsible ways towards it? You know, do we use straws? Do we not use straws? These kind of things are what make you an ocean literate person. And so a lot of my work is trying to see how we can connect people to the ocean to make them more ocean literate. So different activities like citizen science, projects that involve maybe picking up plastic on the beach and counting how much plastic. So people are, one, helping the environment by reducing pollution, but also becoming more aware of the amount of plastic pollution that we have washing up on our coasts, and probably the microplastics that are in the ocean too. Or other kinds of online projects, which are obviously quite popular during COVID, that look at identifying fish, or people can send in photographs of fish that they've seen when they're diving, etc., or fishing, and then they can connect with science, and we can start building these big databases of different species because people are contributing. And so we can learn, but also people can learn, and that can connect people to the ocean and increase their ocean literacy.
Those sorts of projects like citizen science, they're things that even school kids can get involved with, right?
Yeah, there's loads happening. There's lots of different events, and I guess through the Maritime Museum, I'm sure that there are projects there to connect. Here in Tasmania, there's a project called Red Map, and it's run all across the country as well. It's a national project that there's an app. There's also a website that you could all try and visit, so redmap.org.au. And basically, if you're a fisher or a diver and you see a fish or a species that you haven't seen before in an area, or you know it doesn't belong there, you take a photo and then you log it onto the app or the website, and then a scientist comes and verifies it to say, yes, this is X species, and it goes into this big database that people have been collecting of fish species all across Australia. And because people are tracking species that they know haven't been in an area, they've been able to track the movement of species as a result of climate change, because a lot of the waters in Australia on the east coast are warming because of climate change. So fish have to move home so that they can be comfortable in the water where the water is too hot for them. So because of this citizen science project that people all across Australia have been contributing to, we're able to understand how fish behavior and habitats are changing because of climate change.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think it's a great one to think about, that all across Australia there are heaps of different citizen science projects. So no matter what your interest is, you can definitely find ways to get involved. And even if it is little things like looking after your local park and things like animals in your area, always stuff that even students can get involved with and do real science and collect real science data. So something a little bit different. Day in a life. So Chen, what's an average day of your work?
Yeah, actually, I would like to share a wonderful day in Antarctica as a polar expeditioner. It's not too much related with science, but we still have to, talk about science when we in Antarctica. So usually it's, as an expedition guide, we usually go to Antarctica as a tourism thing, and we usually in the day we arrange one zodiac cruise in the morning and another landing plan in the afternoon, totally depending on weather. As I show in my background image here, you can see that it's a very heavily crevassed ice front in the glacier, and there is a very small tiny zodiac here. I was driving the Zodiac with 10 to 12 passengers, and we are trying to get close to the crevassed ice front to help people feel the natural environment in Antarctica and have like a natural connection with the natural environment in Antarctica. And usually during the cruise, we may have the good luck to meet some friends there, like the penguins or seals, sometimes like whales. Especially orca is our favorite one, although they are very, not very friendly sometimes, but yeah, it's still very good to have the chance to see the orca. And we, in the Zodiac cruise, the passengers not just interested in the animals, like they still want to know more about Antarctica, like why the glaciers is so heavily crevassed in the front and how it connected with the ocean in front of them. And I just talk about some basic knowledge about those natural things and how it's connected with environment like the ocean and atmosphere, and how as like a normal person, we can help to protect this beautiful grand and sort of thing. And usually if we have the chance to land, we will choose a safe place with less crevasse, because very risky thing to have a landing on very heavily crevassed glaciers. So we usually choose a very safe place like the research station and have some tour around station. Usually we can see a giant colony of the penguins, and that's sort of thing for the landing site. If the water is not good enough, we usually have some presentations related with different things in Antarctica, like the birds and also the marine mammals, and also something related with my background, like glaciology and the ocean, something related with that. Also the rocks is, the rocks in Antarctica is also different with other parts of the world. And people are very interested in those kind of knowledges from different parts of Antarctica. They care about this place. That's what I'm very happy to know about from those kind of job. I enjoy this part-time job very much, and it provides me a very good chance to, you know, experiment the place I'm researching, although I didn't have the chance to go to it through my own research project, but I get this chance to really see it and feel it through this valuable chance. Yeah, that's a typical day as a polar expedition guide.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's a great also demonstration of the fact that if you're interested in science, there's also lots of other career options as well. And in a way, a major one is communicating science and telling people about science, and whether that is in tourism and that sort of industry, or like I work in museums, so I teach kids about all different types of science, and we have all these amazing exhibitions about science, lots of different science topics, particularly marine, being a maritime museum. So it's great to be able to do that. And you're also doing that and taking control of your own career to learn more about the area that you're researching. So that's great story. Julie, you've also had some amazing days in your science career. What's kind of a typical one for you while you're on expedition?
Which one to pick? I guess one of the highlights, a typical day, but one that was definitely a highlight in my life, was the day spent on Macquarie Island. So this is like a home away from home for me. So for those that aren't aware, Macquarie Island's about 1,500 kilometres south of Tasmania. So it's roughly halfway between Tasmania and Antarctica. And it's this little slither of island. It's about 35 kilometres long and only 5 kilometres wide at its widest point. And I've heard it described as essentially you've got one animal per square metre on the island. But as you can see with the picture behind me, they're not very good at social distancing. So they're often crammed into little corners of the island. And so a typical day, we'd live in some of the huts around the island for sort of 3 weeks at a time away from the station. And you'd wake up in the morning to a penguin colony outside the window of the hut like this. And then you'd walk up onto the plateau, so quite a steep escarpment up onto the plateau, and then across to the other side of the island where the albatross colonies were that we're researching. And our aim for the day was to count how many nests there were in the on these slopes, and also go up and read the leg band of these birds. So these birds have this unique band on their legs, which gives you an idea of how old the bird is. So that number is unique for them because they all look pretty similar. And so going up and down these slopes and reading these bands, so crawling up on your tummy to the nest so that you're keeping as low as you can and staying out of their way as much as possible so they're not too disturbed. And after the full day of that, stopping by at an area on the way home where we'd seen this wandering albatross flying over, and there's only 10 or so breeding pairs on the island, so very few. And I crawled up to this area where we'd seen this bird, and they haven't bred in this location for probably about 40 or 50 years. So I just thought that it would be a bird that was just loafing or hanging around the area. And I crawled up through this thick grass to where the bird was. And as I got closer, I saw this towering nest that it was sitting on. So the nest might be sort of 30 or 40 centimetres high. And then as I got close, saw that there was an egg there. And so this was the first time that they bred there in, like I said, 40 or 50 years. And I was just so excited, I could hardly contain myself and crawled back away and got back to the hut. And the last thing you do, you get your boots off and get into the hut, and then quickly opening up the computer and having a look up who this bird was. And because you've got that unique number, and finding out that it was a brand new breeder that had never bred before. So it's days like that no matter what the weather's doing, whether it's a howling gale or raining like crazy, it's the data that you get at the end of these days just really drives you to get up and get going the next day. And I just love it. It's really addictive.
Amazing adventures there. So I'm just going to I might ask around the rest of the panel, what's the most amazing place that you've been in just maybe 2 sentences for that science has taken you? Marianne?
I've been pretty spoiled. People often ask me what's my favorite animal or the favorite place I've been. And I think I've just been to so many incredible places in the course of my life. I feel really privileged, but, you know, for me, often somewhere special is being often far away from humans, much as I like humans, in somewhere that's very natural, where I'm not really having an impact on what's going on around me. You know, like you, when you see in wildlife documentaries and animals are going about their business and inhabiting these very wild, often removed places from humans. And I think it's partly because, you know, we tend to see less and less of that in the places where we live. And I think it's really important that we all have a connection with nature, whether we get that through a documentary or going on an expedition vessel with Chen, or going to the zoo or whatever, or doing some citizen science and connecting digitally. But yeah, for me, the moments I find myself in really wild places surrounded by nature, you know, you can breathe, it just feels wonderful. But Kerguelen, where I did my PhD, was pretty amazing. You can all Google that, I'll put it in the chat. You can find this far-flung little island in the middle of the southern Indian Ocean.
Thank you. Rachel, where's the best top place that you've been for science?
Like Marianne, I think I've been to a lot of places. I've been really, really lucky. And I think that's the exciting thing about science, is that, especially ocean science, because the ocean is huge, it brings you to lots of different places. Before I lived in Tasmania, I lived in the Maldives. It was a really special time because, quite like Marianne, there wasn't a lot of people, and I lived in an island where I could be in or on the water all of the time in really beautiful reefs. And you know, obviously the temperature is very favorable, so you can spend lots of time in the water without getting very cold. So that was a really special time, and a really beautiful ocean there as well.
Thank you. And Kirsty, where's somewhere that you've been?
So I would say that my top pick was, I worked as a volunteer at the research station in Galapagos for a few months, and that was an eye-opener on so many levels. First of all, the animals, you can get so close to them. You know, you turn around and there's amazing seabirds, or there's marine iguanas, or you jump in the water and then there's sharks and fish and everything like that. And then you have the added dimension of being somewhere totally different and new and different culture, and try and conduct my science in Spanish, which was challenging to say the least. So I think that was the place that it didn't just have amazing marine experiences, but it was also living and experiencing a different culture and a different language, and really pushing myself outside my comfort zone. So I would pick that.
Right, thank you. So we've got a bit of time left now for some questions, and we've had one come through. So it's from Claire, who says that she's looking to study science at university, but I was wondering if you have any advice on finding or choosing the area to focus on. So I'm opening it up to anyone who thinks they might have some ideas on how to choose what area to focus on. Yeah, Rachel?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that my degree was in marine science, so it was really broad, and it let me figure out the subjects I liked and didn't like, and it kind of gave me a really good introduction about the scope and different types of marine science. So I would try, and unless you specifically know what kind of marine science you'd like to study, to go as broad as possible so that you can explore and have different opportunities, I guess, to learn, and then to figure out what really suits you and your interests.
Yep, and Kirsty?
I would also say that that there's no rush, there's no pressure to find the right career for you immediately. You know, I did science at university, did oceanography at university, and then I spent a long time doing other things before I came back to science. And I think that time doing other jobs was really useful for me to find the type of marine science that I was most interested in. So I think often when you're choosing university courses, you can feel this pressure that I've got to get this right today. But as Rachel said, if you pick a really general course, that stands you in good stead if you decide in the future that you want to specialize in a particular area.
Yeah, and Julie?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, so I mean, I originally set out when I started to do science, it was actually because I wanted to be a police officer, and they said you should go and get some experience in live life a little bit, and that's when I got really hooked. And it was actually after the science degree that, well, during I got hooked on marine science, but took a year off, went and volunteered on a range of projects, and I felt like that is a really good opportunity to see how different people work, different organisations, and get involved and see what you do and don't like in that space. And I agree with the others, don't rush. So I was fortunate to be able to do honours and a PhD, but the time between them was sort of 8 years before I did my PhD. So it really, there's no urgency. Look around, see what you like and get involved.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful advice, and also for any younger students as well. That goes for choosing subjects in school as well. There's no pressure that you have to do the subjects that are going to give you this big career in the future. You can choose subjects that you like and enjoy, and of course, hopefully some of those could be science subjects. But then those subjects can take you in different places, and yeah, you can always change what you're going to do. I've remember so many of my friends at university sometimes changed degrees 2 or 3 times before they decided on what they wanted. So there's no pressure at all to decide when you're in, sort of halfway through high school, exactly what you're going to be 10, 20 years down the track. So if you've got any other questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat box. Might just have a quick look here. Yes, we've had a few mentions so far of different times and places people have volunteered and sort of gotten involved in that way. Did anyone else have any other different projects or things that they've been involved in that have not necessarily been, I guess, jobs, but have been really important in terms of building their skills and learning?
Yeah, I think this is a important point to keep coming back to, because I think in different parts of our lives, we often feel a bit shy putting ourselves forward into a new environment to give something a go. And I think if you're not sure about your direction explicitly, then it's really good to volunteer and to have a go at different things. And for me, one of my first experiences of doing that was when I was doing my science degree at uni, and I was quite shy and I was taking it all in. And there was an after hours lecture about humpback whale ecology. This professor was studying humpback whales up in Queensland. And at the end of the lecture, I struck up enough courage to go and have a conversation with him. My heart was beating out of my chest. I was so nervous. And I went and had a chat to him about his lecture, and he was really lovely. And he said, oh, well, if you're interested, we might have you might be able to come up and help us. I could hardly believe it. And, in that evening, his postdoc gave me a call, in the landline. We only had landlines back then. And before I knew it, I was heading up to Queensland as a 19-year-old by myself to go and help on this humpback whale project, and that wasn't in my mind when I went up to have a chat to this lecturer. And I think now I'm a lecturer and we always really appreciate students who are keen and enthusiastic. You don't have to know exactly what you want to do, but if you're keen and you want to give something a go, well, we're happy to give you a go. And I think you can do that in any aspect of your life, whether it's your studies or some other opportunity you want to try outside of school to see if you like something.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. It's all about putting yourself out there, and I think nowadays we're so lucky with online as well. You can check out if there is stuff sort of around. We've got another question about nature and conservation programs to help marine ecosystems and animals around northern New South Wales. So quite a specific area. If anyone have any ideas of things that might be there, or it might be something we have to research a bit more. Just try and think about that. But yeah, Julie?
Yeah, look, there's often opportunities to volunteer on the whale migration work that goes up through that area. So Byron Bay is often one of the key spots for doing a lot of those observations. And so there's some universities, I think Southern Cross University and the University of Queensland, that do some work out of those sites. And so asking around and seeing if there's anyone there that would be happy to have volunteers come up. And it's often sitting up on the headland with your binoculars and looking out for the whales, and then passing that on to one of the observers and recording that information. So I've been up and done that a couple of times when I was sort of around 20 or so, and it was just fabulous and a really good chance to meet a bunch of different people and, you know, sit up in the sunshine watching whales. So you can't really complain too much about a job like that.
Yeah, great, thanks. And a lot of it is just no matter where you are in Australia, just asking the question. There are a lot of specific local things around, and yeah, the internet is a great way to search that up. Or of course, working in the education team here at the Maritime Museum, I'm also more than happy to answer any emails that you may have. So for those of you who booked, we can sort of, I'll send you out an email afterwards. So if there's any questions that we might have missed, we can pass them on as well. So, but yeah, there's also a lot of national projects as well. So in terms of things like finding out, apps and databases and things like that we can actually add to for lots of different types of animals. So we are right on 12 o'clock. I'll just double check there's no more questions. Yeah, so yeah, thank you, Marianne, for popping in the chat there. Another great way to do it is check out your local universities, and also to check out local museums. So particularly some museums have very big science projects. I know here in Sydney, it's the Australian Museum, has a lot of great science projects as well. So check those out if you're interested in getting involved. But thank you all for joining in today. It's been an absolutely wonderful discussion. And I'll just sort of let everyone else say if there's any last sentences we want to say before we finish up today.
I would just say one thing is that don't underestimate the skills you've gained in other areas. If you are interested in science, but you feel like you know, whether it's holiday jobs you've had or things like that, that you think, oh, that's not directly related to science. There's so many experiences and skills you may have that are actually really useful in a science career, whether that is, if you can speak another language, that, you know, that can be helpful. If you are particularly good at, you know, you've worked in a retail environment, or you've done budgeting or accounts, you know, everyone who runs a science research program has to look after those sorts of things. So it's worth thinking a little bit laterally, you know, if you're worried that you don't have the skills or the background, that actually there are other things that you've done and other experiences you've had that can contribute to your science career.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's also another great reason to not necessarily rush straight into science, because by doing other things, you can also, and by studying a bit wider, you can learn all these other skills that are incredibly useful as well. All right, so I'd like to say thank you to everyone. I'm sure it's been an absolutely wonderful sort of experience for all of our attendees to hear from you all. And just hopefully everyone, all of the speakers and all of our attendees have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.